Jinna Kim never expected her last day alive would start with such an ordinary complaint about the ship's recycling system. She had crawled into the bio-containment lab to fix a clogged air filter, grumbling about maintenance duties that should have been handled by actual maintenance crew, not a xenobiologist with a PhD in alien life forms. The lab was supposed to be empty. The Sarkle predator had been transferred to a different holding cell weeks ago, or so she thought. The moment she heard the low, rumbling growl from the shadows, her blood turned to ice. There it was, massive and terrifying, watching her with those silver eyes that seemed to glow in the dim emergency lighting. Jinna's mind raced through everything she knew about Sarkle predators. They could grow up to 10 feet tall. Their claws could slice through reinforced metal. Most terrifying of all, they didn't kill their prey quickly. They preferred to hunt slowly, savoring the fear before the final strike. Every spacer had heard the stories of ships found drifting in space, crew members missing, only scratches and tears in the metal walls as evidence of what happened. She tried to back toward the exit, but her heart sank when she saw the red warning, lights blinking on the door controls. Emergency lockdown. The ship's automated systems had engaged after detecting the boarding party trying to break in. Nobody could open those doors from the outside, and the internal controls weren't responding to her frantic tapping. The Sarkle rose from its crouched position, unfolding like a nightmare made of scales and muscle. It was even larger than she'd imagined, its head nearly touching the ceiling. Each movement was fluid and controlled, like a predator that knew its prey had nowhere to run. Jinna pressed herself against the cold metal wall, feeling every rivet dig into her back through her uniform. Her hands fumbled with the datapad clipped to her belt, accidentally activating a personal message she'd been saving for later. Her son's voice filled the room, sweet and innocent, singing a bedtime song they used to share. "Twinkle, twinkle, little star, how I wonder what you are." Minho was only 5 years old, staying with her parents on Earth while she completed this research mission. She had planned to be home for his birthday next month. Tears began streaming down her face. Not from fear of dying, though that terrified her, but from the crushing realization that she would never see her little boy again. She would never help him with his homework, never hear him laugh at her silly jokes, never tuck him into bed and listen to him talk about his adventures at school. The Sarkle stopped moving, its massive head tilted to one side, studying her with an expression she couldn't read. Those silver eyes that had seemed so menacing moments before now looked almost curious. It seemed to be watching the tears rolling down her cheeks with something resembling fascination. Then it spoke. The voice was deep and gravelly, like rocks grinding together, but the words were clear enough in broken galactic standard. Small flesh and makes water drops. Jinna was so shocked she forgot to be terrified for a moment. Sarkle could speak? In all the briefings, all the scientific papers, no one had mentioned they were intelligent enough for language. They were described as savage predators, nothing more. Your eyes, the creature continued, taking a step closer. They leak. Why does small flesh do this thing? She stared at it, unable to process what was happening. The recording was still playing, Minho's young voice now humming because he'd forgotten some of the words. The Sarkle's head turned toward the sound, then back to her. "My child," Jinna whispered, her voice barely audible. "That's my son. I'll never see him again." The predator's expression shifted again. For a moment, something almost gentle crossed its alien features. Then the ship shuddered violently as explosions echoed through the hull. The attacking force had breached the outer defenses. Through the reinforced viewing port, Jinna could see figures moving in the corridor outside. But these weren't human rescue teams. The attackers wore the distinctive armor of Garel slavers, the most ruthless raiders in this sector of space. They were known for capturing humans for the illegal organ trade and worse. What happened next defied everything Jinna thought she knew about Sarkle predators. Instead of using the chaos to attack her, the massive creature moved to block the door. It positioned itself between her and the entrance, its claws extending fully for the first time since she'd seen it. "These ones," the Sarkle growled, its voice taking on a tone of pure hatred. "Take younglings. Hurt younglings. You know about the slavers? Jinnah asked, her mind reeling from this impossible conversation. The creature's eyes blazed with an intensity that made her step back. They steal our eggs, our young ones. We hunt them, we kill them, only them. Everything Jinnah had been taught about these creatures suddenly seemed wrong. They weren't mindless killing machines. They had families, they had children. And they were at war with the same enemies that threatened humanity. The door began to glow red as the slavers' cutting tools worked on the other side. They would be through soon. Jinnah looked at the Sarkle predator that stood between her and certain death, protecting a member of a species it was supposed to hunt. What happens now? She asked. The creature's lips pulled back, revealing rows of sharp teeth in what might have been a smile. Now, small flesh Jinnah, we fight. The red glow from the door grew brighter as the Garrel slavers worked their cutting tools from the other side. Jinnah could hear muffled voices speaking in harsh, clipped tones, words she didn't understand but recognized as threats from the tone alone. Her heart hammered against her ribs so hard she was sure it would burst. The Sarkle predator, who had introduced himself simply as Neth, crouched low near the entrance. His massive form blocked most of the door from view, silver scales reflecting the emergency lighting like polished metal. Despite his protective stance, Jinnah couldn't shake the absurdity of her situation. She was trusting her life to one of the galaxy's most feared predators. Tell me about your young one, Neth said quietly, not turning from his guard position. The gravelly voice that had terrified her minutes ago now seemed almost gentle. Minho, Jinnah whispered, clutching her. Datapad, he's 5. He loves drawing pictures of spaceships and wants to be an explorer like Mommy. Her voice cracked. He makes me paper flowers and leaves them under my pillow before I go on missions. Neth's head turned slightly toward her. You leave him to study stars? Someone has to, she replied, wiping her tears with the back of her sleeve. The research we do here helps protect worlds like Earth, like his world. A sound like grinding stone came from Neth's throat. It took Jinnah a moment to realize he was laughing, though it wasn't a sound that brought comfort. Your people think we devour flesh, think we hunt for pleasure, don't you? The question slipped out before she could stop it. Neth's laughter stopped abruptly. He turned to face her fully, and she saw something in those alien eyes she hadn't expected. Pain. Deep, ancient pain that seemed to go beyond physical suffering. We have young ones, too, he said slowly. Eggs that sing in the nest war, hatchlings that chase light bugs through moss forests. My mate, Sesh, she makes, what is your word? Songs. She makes songs for our not yet born. Jinnah felt her worldview tilting. You have families? Had, Neth corrected, his claws scraping against the metal floor. Slavers came to Kethmore, took eggs while we hunted far beasts. When we returned, he made a sound that needed no translation, pure grief. The cutting intensified on the door. Sparks began shooting through small holes appearing in the metal. They had minutes, maybe less. That's why you're at war with us? Jinnah asked, pieces clicking together in her mind. Because you think we took your children? Neth's expression darkened, but not with anger directed at her. Not your species. These ones. He gestured toward the door with one razor-sharp claw. They wear your faces, speak your words, but they are not like you. Jinnah's datapad chimed, softly. A new message had come through, probably her last correspondence from home. Without thinking, she activated it. The screen filled with her parents' faces, sitting at their kitchen table with Minho between them. Mommy, her son's voice rang out clearly. Grandpa taught me how to make origami cranes. Look. He held up a slightly lopsided paper bird, grinning, with pride. She couldn't stop the sob that escaped her throat. Neth moved closer, his massive form somehow less intimidating than before. He has your eyes, the alien observed. And your smile when you look at the message box. I adopted him, Jinnah said without knowing why she was sharing such personal information. His birth parents died in a transport accident. I wasn't sure I could love someone else's child the same way, but the moment I saw him... Love transcends blood bonds, Neth said simply. All young ones deserve protection. The door groaned as the first section fell away, creating a gap large enough for an arm. A Garrel weapon barrel poked through, firing wildly. Neth roared and slashed at the gun, his claws tearing it apart like paper. Small flesh Jinnah, he said urgently. Can you make the air rivers stop flowing? Keep the poison makers from spreading? It took her a moment to understand what he meant. The ventilation system. If the slavers had some kind of chemical weapon, or sedative controlling airflow would be crucial. Yes, she said, moving toward the environmental controls. But why are you helping me? Your people have been killing humans for decades. Neth blocked another weapon that tried to push through the gap. Because you cry for your young one. Because you care for child not born to you. These are not actions of flesh eaters. More sparks flew as the hole widened. Soon they would be able to fit a person through. And because, Neth continued, his voice dropping to a whisper, I recognize something in your tears. Something I have not seen since my own hatchlings were taken. Jinnah's hands paused over the control panel. What do you mean? But before Neth could answer, a Garrel slaver squeezed through the gap, weapon raised and ready to fire. This wasn't the time for conversation. This was the time to fight for their lives. Stay behind me, small flesh, Neth commanded, rising to his full terrifying height. Let me show these egg thieves why Sarkul are truly feared. The battle was about to begin, but something had fundamentally changed. They weren't predator and prey anymore. They were two beings, fighting for their young one's future. The first Garrel slaver who squeezed through the gap never saw Neth coming. The Sarkul's massive claws swept through the air with deadly precision, sending the intruder crashing against the wall. But more were coming. Jinnah could see shadows moving on the other side of the damaged door, hear their harsh voices coordinating the attack. The controls, she shouted, rushing to the environmental panel. Her fingers flew over the touchscreen, sealing ventilation shafts and adjusting airflow patterns. Whatever the slavers were planning, she wouldn't give them an easy way to spread toxins through the ship. Two more attackers pushed through the widening gap, firing energy weapons that left scorch marks on the walls. Neth moved like liquid lightning, despite his massive size. His natural armor deflected most shots while his claws and tail did devastating work at close range. Jinnah! Neth roared over the sound of combat. The storage units! Look at what these murderers collect! She understood. While Neth held the door, she ran to the evidence lockers lining the far wall. Her security clearance still worked. Another, oversight by the emergency systems. The first locker opened with a soft hiss. Inside were eggs, dozens of them. Sarkul eggs, their pearlescent shells cracked and empty. Some still held dried remnants of what must have been developing life. Jinnah's stomach lurched. These weren't just trophies or research specimens. Someone had been harvesting them systematically. She opened another locker. More eggs, but also human items that made no sense together. Medical equipment designed for live extractions. Neural interface headsets. Data pads with shipping manifests showing routes between human colonies and uncharted space. Oh my God, she whispered, pieces of a horrible puzzle falling into place. You see truth now, Neth said, dispatching another slaver with brutal efficiency. These ones steal our young, sell them to worse things in deep space. Jinnah opened a third locker, her hands shaking. Inside were personal effects from human colonies, children's toys, family photos, identification badges. But mixed among them were more Sarkul eggshells and something else that made her blood run cold. Small, neural implants designed for juvenile biology. The sound of more cutting tools meant the slavers were widening the entrance. Soon they'd be able to bring heavy weapons through. But Jinnah barely noticed. Her mind was reeling from what she was seeing. The raids on human colonies, she said, understanding flooding through her. You weren't attacking us. You were chasing them. Always we follow the egg thieves, Neth confirmed, his voice heavy with old pain. But they hide among your kind. Wear your faces. Speak with your words. When we come for them, your people see only monsters attacking. Another horrifying realization hit her. The neural implants, they're not just stealing your young. They're experimenting on them, and on human children too. Yes. Neth's voice was barely a whisper. They take young of both kinds. Make them into things. Weapons, tools. Jinnah pulled up the manifests on one of the data pads, colony names she recognized, dates that corresponded with Sarkle raids. But now she saw the pattern that had been hidden. The raids always came after children had gone missing. The Sarkle weren't causing the disappearances, they were responding to them. Every time your people attacked a human settlement, she said, her voice growing stronger with horrified understanding. You were trying to rescue children? Young ones of both kinds, Neth confirmed. We follow the scent trails, the energy signatures. But by the time we arrive, an explosion rocked the lab as the slavers brought through a plasma charge. The gap in the door was now large enough for 3 people to enter at once. Jinnah could see more figures gathering in the corridor beyond. We need to tell everyone, she said urgently, grabbing the most damning evidence files. The whole galaxy thinks you're monsters, but you've been fighting the same enemy we should have been fighting all along. Your people would not believe, Neth said, but there was hope in his voice she hadn't heard before. Sarkle are too different, too frightening. Maybe, Jinnah admitted, checking her sidearm's charge. But we have to try. These files prove everything. The real timeline of events, the slave routes, the experiments. A new voice called from the corridor, speaking accented galactic standard. We know you're in there, human. Send out the Sarkle and we might let you live. Jinnah almost laughed at the irony. They had it completely backwards. Listen to me, Neth said urgently, crouching beside her. There is something else. Something about your young one. Minho? What about him? But before Neth could answer, the slavers launched their full assault. Energy weapons blazed through the enlarged opening, forcing both defenders to take cover. The time for revelations had passed. Now came the fight for survival. Yet even as combat erupted around her, Jinnah clutched the data files that would change everything. If they could just survive long enough to share the truth, the galaxy would learn that its greatest monsters had actually been its unsung heroes all along. The war between humans and Sarkle wasn't a conflict between species. It was a tragic misunderstanding that had cost countless innocent lives on both sides. The real enemy had been hiding in plain sight, all along. The lab erupted into chaos as 4 slavers poured through the gap at once. Energy blasts scorched the air where Jinnah had been standing a second before. She rolled behind a workstation, clutching the data files that could change everything. Neth moved like a storm made flesh. His massive claws swept through the first attacker, while his powerful tail struck another, sending them both flying. But the slavers had come prepared. One raised a device Jinnah didn't recognize, a cylinder covered in blinking lights. Neural disruptor, Neth roared, diving to one. Side as green energy pulsed from the weapon. Where the beam passed, the air itself seemed to shimmer and twist. Jinnah's medical training kicked in. Neural disruptors were banned weapons that attacked the nervous system directly. They wouldn't just kill, they would cause agony beyond description. Neth, get clear, she shouted, firing her sidearm at the disruptor. Her shots went wide, but they forced the slaver to dodge. The alien warrior rolled behind a support pillar, breathing hard. They bring painmakers. These ones learn from failed hunts. More slavers were forcing their way through the entrance. Jinnah counted at least 6 now, with more voices in the corridor. They were trapped. The central systems, Jinnah said suddenly. If I can reach the ship's main computer, I can send the evidence files to every vessel in this sector. Too far, Neth replied, using his claws to tear a chunk of metal from the floor for cover. They will cut you down before you reach the door. A new voice called from among the attackers, colder and more cultured than the others. Dr. Kim, isn't it? We know you've seen the files. Such a shame you understand so little. Jinnah's blood chilled. They knew who she was. You see, Doctor, the voice continued. Your people and the Sarkul were never meant to destroy each other completely. You were meant to weaken each other. Make yourselves vulnerable, easy to harvest. You're orchestrating the entire war, Jinnah called back, rage building in her chest. My people die thinking we're defending ourselves, while the Sarkul die, trying to save their young. Cruel laughter echoed through the lab. And both species' children end up in our laboratories. The neural implants work so much better on developing minds. Neth's roar shook the entire room. The sound was primal, filled with a parent's fury that transcended species. He launched himself from cover, moving faster than Jinnah thought possible, for something so large. The slavers opened fire, but Neth absorbed the hits and kept coming. Jinnah saw her chance. While they were distracted, she sprinted toward the communication console. Energy blasts seared past her head. One grazed her shoulder, spinning her around, but she kept running. Behind her, she heard the wet sounds of Neth's claws finding their targets. Her fingers flew over the console, uploading the evidence files to the emergency broadcast system. If she could just get the transmission to go out. "Stop her!" someone screamed. A massive form blocked her view as Neth positioned himself between Jinnah and the remaining slavers. His scales were scored with burn marks, and dark blood seeped from several wounds. "The upload," he growled. "How long?" 30 seconds, Jinnah replied, her hands steady despite the chaos around them. "Maybe less." A slaver with officer markings stepped forward, neural disruptor raised. "Stand down, Sarkul. We'll make your death quick if you surrender the human." "Now." Neth's laugh was like grinding stone. "You who steal young ones offer mercy? You know nothing of honor." The upload progress bar crept forward. 15 seconds. The officer activated the disruptor and Neth screamed as green energy washed over him. But instead of falling, the massive alien grabbed the weapon's barrel with his bare hands, crushing it despite the agony clearly coursing through him. "Now, Jinnah," she hit the final command. The transmission began broadcasting on all emergency frequencies, evidence of the slavers' manipulation, proof that the war between humans and Sarkul was manufactured, coordinates of slave, routes and hidden bases. The remaining slavers opened fire with everything they had. Jinnah dove behind the console as energy blasts destroyed half the equipment. She rolled, came up with her weapon, and began returning fire, but they were outnumbered and outgunned. Neth collapsed to one knee, his body smoking from multiple hits. The officer drew a sidearm, aiming at Jinnah's head. "A noble effort," he said. "But no one will believe tales of Sarkul honor." The sound of multiple airlocks cycling filled the corridor beyond. Footsteps. Lots of them. The officer's confident expression faltered. "Impossible. We jammed all communications." "Emergency broadcasts go through different relays," Jinnah gasped, pulling herself up against the console. "Military protocols. Every ship within 50 light minutes just heard everything." Through the damaged entrance, figures in combat armor began to appear. But these weren't more slavers. United Fleet Marines moving with deadly precision. The officer looked at his remaining men, then at the approaching soldiers, and made his choice. He turned the gun on himself. "No!" Jinnah shouted, but it was too late. As the Marines secured the lab, Jinnah crawled to where Neth had fallen. The great alien's breathing was labored, his wounds severe. "Did we succeed?" he asked weakly. Jinnah nodded, tears streaming down her face. "The whole galaxy knows now. Humans and Sarkul, we're not enemies. We've been fighting the wrong war." Neth's alien features somehow managed to convey satisfaction. "Perhaps our young ones will know peace." The Marines were calling for medical teams, shouting orders, securing the scene, but Jinnah barely heard them. She knelt beside her unlikely ally, this creature who had protected her against all reason and logic. They had survived. More importantly, they had exposed the truth. The war between their species was built on lies. But now, finally, there was hope for something better. The medical bay hummed with activity as Jinnah sat beside Neth's recovery pod. His massive form barely fit inside the specialized equipment, but Sarkul physiology was remarkably resilient. The doctors said he would survive, though full recovery would take weeks. 3 days had passed since their battle in the containment lab. The evidence they'd broadcast had sent shockwaves through the galaxy. Emergency sessions were being called in every major government. Ships from both human and Sarkle territories were converging on their location, no longer as enemies but as potential allies. Jinnah's datapad chimed softly. Another message from Earth. She'd received dozens since news of the revelation broke, from colleagues, from government officials, from journalists wanting her story. But this one made her heart skip. It was from her parents, with Minho. She activated the recording, and her son's face filled the screen. At 5 years old, he was all bright eyes and missing teeth, grinning at the camera with pure joy. Mommy, Grandpa says you're a hero. You made friends with the scary space dragon." Jinnah couldn't help but smile, though tears threatened to spill. "Not scary," she whispered to the recording. Misunderstood. Behind Minho, she could see her father, probably the one who dubbed Neth a space dragon. Her mother appeared in the frame, wrapping her arms around the boy with the easy affection that had always made Jinnah feel secure as a child. "We're so proud of you, sweetheart." Her mother's voice came through clearly. "And we can't wait to meet your new friend when you come home." The recording ended, but Jinnah kept staring at the blank screen. Something nagged at her, a memory from their battle, something Neth had started to say about Minho before the fighting began. "You are troubled, small-fleshed Jinnah." She looked up to find Neth's silver eyes focused on her. He'd been unconscious for 2 days, but now he was clearly alert despite the medical equipment surrounding him. "You're awake," she said, setting the datapad aside. "How do you feel?" "Like I have been stepped on by a transport hauler," he replied, his voice weaker than usual but tinged with what might have been amusement. "But alive. We both live. This is good. Better than good. The whole galaxy is talking about us." Human and Sarkle ships are working together for the first time in decades. They're already planning joint operations against the slaver networks. Neth's expression grew thoughtful. "And your young one, Minho? He is well?" "Yes, he's safe on Earth. With my parents, but..." Jinnah hesitated. "Before the slavers broke through, you were about to tell me something about him. Something you recognized." The great alien was quiet for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice was gentler than she'd ever heard it. "Jinnah of the humans. May I tell you a story?" She nodded, settling deeper into her chair. 5 years ago, I was hunting slavers in the Tau Epsilon system. My mate Sesh was with our clutch of eggs on the homeworld, singing them songs while they grew. We had tracked a slaver transport to a research station hidden in an asteroid field. Jinnah felt a chill run down her spine. 5 years ago. She knew that time frame too well. The station was full of stolen young ones, Neth continued. Human, children and Sarkle hatchlings all being prepared for terrible things. The slavers fought hard, many died. In the chaos, I found a storage chamber filled with the smallest captives. His eyes found hers, and she saw recognition there that made her breath catch. Among them was a human infant, male, perhaps 1 year old. He was clutching a small toy, a spaceship made of soft fabric, blue and silver, with tiny lights that blinked. Jinnah's hand went to her throat. Minho still had that toy. It was the only thing that had survived the transport crash that supposedly killed his birth parents, or so she'd been told. The infant was malnourished, ill, but when I picked him up, he stopped crying. He looked at me with eyes so bright, so alive. Eyes that seemed to know things no young one should know. "Oh God," Jinnah whispered. "I carried him out of that burning station, made sure he reached human authorities. I stayed hidden, watched from afar to ensure he found safety." Neth's voice grew softer. "He was placed with a woman who wept for children she could not have, a woman whose heart was large enough to love a child not born to her." Jinnah couldn't speak. The room seemed to spin around her. "When I saw you crying in the containment lab, watched you listen to his voice, I recognized something. The way your eyes softened when you heard him sing. The love that transcended blood bonds." Neth paused. "But there was something more. Something I had only seen once before. What? She managed to ask. The pattern of tears you shed. The specific frequency. It matched the harmonic resonance I had detected from that infant years ago, a trait that appears when human and Sarkle genetic material combines in unexpected ways. The room fell silent, except for the soft beeping of medical equipment. My son, Gina said slowly, is part Sarkle? Not part, Neth corrected gently. He is a bridge. Born of two worlds, carrying the best of both species, it is why he seemed to know me even as an infant, why the slavers wanted him so badly for their experiments. Gina felt everything click into place. Minho's unusual intelligence for his age, his strange dreams about singing stones that he drew constantly, the way he always seemed to understand animal behavior better than other children. There are others like him, Neth continued, hidden throughout the galaxy, children who carry both bloodlines. The slavers have been hunting them, trying to create weapons from their unique genetics. She stared at the data pad with its frozen image of her son's smiling face. Her son, who was simultaneously entirely human and something wonderfully more. Does this change anything? Neth asked quietly. Now that you know the truth about how you found each other? Gina thought of 5 years of bedtime stories and scraped knees, of first words and tentative steps, of a child who'd brought light into her world when she'd thought she'd never be a mother. It changes nothing, she said firmly. He's my son. No matter what else he is, he's mine. Neth made that grinding stone sound that meant he was pleased. This is the response of a true parent. Species matters less than love. She stood and moved to the window, looking out at the bustling docking bays where human and Sarkul ships now worked side by side. Representatives from both species were finally talking instead of fighting. He's going to love meeting you properly, she said. His mama's space dragon friend. Perhaps, Neth replied, when next we meet, I can teach him the song Sarkles sing to their young ones. He carries that heritage too. Gina smiled through her tears. Her son, their bridge between worlds, was going to grow up in a galaxy where humans and Sarkle could finally be allies instead of enemies, all because she'd been trapped in a room with the most dangerous predator in space, who turned out to be the most protective guardian instead.